Atlanta, the first day, Bobby Cox came and sat at my chair. Like he's sitting in my chair in my locker and wants to talk to me, giving me the time of day. And this Hall of Famer, right? I came over with a 20-something ERA, kind of a scrap heap pickup. And I'm talking to Bobby Cox for 20, 25 minutes. He gives me his time. I mean, just the confidence that gave me and the comfort. So I think just from a confidence standpoint and feeling like I belong, going over to Atlanta was just the perfect landing spot.
I'm Billy Ryan, and this is the No One Is Watching podcast, where we explore high-performing teams, individuals, and leaders, and dig deep to find out what makes them tick. This show highlights the DNA shared by elite performers, the process by which they leverage that talent, and ultimately helps you apply those lessons to your own life, business, or team. Cool, man. So you grew up on the West Coast, up in Washington, and then you got drafted by the Mariners, right? You got drafted by the hometown team?
Yep.
That's pretty sweet. That'd be exciting.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it actually came down to the Braves or the Mariners. And I was on the phone. Yeah, I was on the phone with the Braves. Jay Harrison called me and was asking me, would you take 250 if we take you with this next this pick? So they were like 2 or 3 picks after the Mariners. Phone beeps and I pick up and it's a scout for the Mariners asking if I'd take 150. I said yes to both. I just wanted to play.
Whoever takes me, I'm playing.
Yep. I was pretty committed. I'd gone down to a tournament in Arizona and kind of had a big showing in the fall. So I was hearing I was going to be a first rounder from all these scouts and everybody coming to the house. So when I started hearing that, it's like, I'm going to play baseball. And then came out in the spring here and it's 45 degrees and windy and I'm throwing 86 and
yeah. Were you where were you signed anywhere to go play college as a backup?
Oregon State.
Okay.
Yeah, so my sophomore, junior year would have been the 2 years they won the championships. I could have messed it up, though.
Yeah, right. So you wind up signing with the Mariners. Where'd they send you? Send you out to rookie ball?
Straight to Peoria. 3 days out of high school, jumping on a plane.
Experience?
Yeah, it was eye-opening. I mean, coming from a small town, you don't really, you don't know how to get around. I got onto the what are those taxi cabs? They're not taxis, but they're like vans that take a bunch of people places. I get on that thing and I tell him I need to go to the Hampton Inn. The guy looks at me like, buddy, there's 17 Hampton Inns out here. All I knew was Bell Road, Hampton Inn.
Yeah.
So we stopped at 2 or 3 before we found the right one. I mean, that's just hilarious. How ripe you are coming out of high school.
Dude, it's funny. Like people don't get enough appreciation for that. You're coming out of Walla Walla, Washington as a high school kid. Then you get these kids that come over from Latin America, don't speak the language, and all of a sudden they got to navigate. And, all these stories about guys just eating at the same restaurant every day, right? Because they can't pronounce it and they just point at the menu and I'm just going to get this. That was okay. I'm going to get it every day. It's an experience in adulthood when you're a teenager.
Yeah, it was a huge adjustment for me. And I mean, it was great though, because you don't have a lot of different experiences or experience a lot of different cultures, coming from a small town in Washington. Guys from Miami, like they're coming from a big city. They're hitting on every girl they see. Like they just have nothing to lose. They're just living it up. And, meet these guys from Latin America, Dominican, Venezuela, and they're going to Denny's and ordering pizza for breakfast or whatever word they learn, so you kind of learn pretty quick how to find things to appreciate in everybody and get along with everybody and kind of accept that everybody's different, but you have to in a hurry, if you want to fit in.
It's a great thing about sports, man, right? Like it doesn't really matter. You get in that locker room, that clubhouse. It's just like, all right, here we go. Doesn't matter where you came from. Here we are. And let's go figure it out. And, most of those guys are facing similar struggles, just trying to feel their way through it, let alone go perform on the field.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's like for a lot of those guys, just getting to the park's the hard part. I mean, they've been playing baseball their whole life, but trying to figure out where to go, how to get to the field, what time to be there, get into a routine and find your place in that clubhouse is just, I mean, the first couple of years is hard, I think, for everybody.
Yeah. How'd you come out of the chute performance wise? Did you pitch okay?
Yeah, pretty good. My first year was great, but you're in rookie ball, I mean, everybody's swinging at everything. So if you have a little movement on the ball, just get ground balls and get through it. I got called up to Everett, which was short season, about, last month of the season. did really well there. And then the next year going to Wisconsin, I just got crushed. Like I was not ready for the level. Maturity wise, I don't think I was ready either, but uh, wound up getting hurt and shutting that season down. And the next year, I got to be part of a group. These guys that had been in Everett the year before together, a lot of college guys, like just a squad. And I figured out how to kind of be a part of that. And from there, we shot up. That team won the Cal League championship the next year. And just being a part of a group for the first time, because you come out of high school, you kind of get special treatment and it's all about you. Everybody's talking about you. And then you get into pro ball and nobody cares. When I got drafted, I showed up like everybody's going to want to know who the sixth rounder is. Yeah,
Yeah.
another guy, right? So that
Yeah.
was like an adjustment. But I got to be a part of that group and really see what it was like to be on a team that was focused on winning and cared about each other and spent time away from the field together. And it's crazy because I have a ring from the Cal League and I have a ring NLCS championship ring with the Mets. You couldn't pry that Cal League ring out of my hands.
I love it.
The Mets one doesn't mean much for me because I got there late. I was terrible and I wasn't on the playoff roster. So it's just, it's a cool thing to have. But that Cal League ring is like my first time being part of like a group of guys that I love that played together.
That's cool. That's cool. You still
Yeah.
stay in touch with those guys?
A lot of them, yeah.
Yeah.
Mark Lowe was on that team. He lives out in Portland. He got a good amount of time in the big leagues. He's one of my best friends.
Yeah, when I was in Arizona, we had a group that came through similar to that, right? Which is they just kind of graduated through the system together. They wound up winning the back-to-back Southern League championships. I think they won the AAA national championship in Reno, and it was just they kind of all got there. It took them a year or two to kind of align, and then they were just playing together every year. And that's like we would have a lot of conversations about balancing developing and winning, right? You have to develop first. But if you go, if you go through the minor leagues 3, 4, 5, 6 years and you never win anything, right? You never play on an above 500 team. And then all of a sudden you're expected to win every night. That's a tough switch to flip, right?
Yeah, and you're not used to that pressure, right? I mean, it's dangerous to turn it into just a numbers game, trying to put up your numbers, punch the clock, and go home. And those, development wise, getting called up to the big leagues on a team that's going to lose 100 games, that's really tough too, because you're not learning, what it's about. And I always felt like if I was on a team where I could focus on helping the team win, I was a lot better player because it takes the pressure off your own performance. If you give up a run up 5 in the ninth, who cares? We're still up 4. I could finish this game for my team, save some arms in the bullpen. But if it's only about you give up that run in the ninth, your ERA went up, and it's a bad day. And that kind of snowballs.
It's a great point. Yeah, you're looking around at, okay, is he getting somebody else up in the pen? Am I going to be on a plane after the game, heading back? That's a great point. I hadn't really thought about it in those terms, right? Coming up, in some ways you view it as a non-competitive team. It's like you give a longer leash to some of these kids, you give them more opportunity to fail. But you're right. It's like those losses, they can be magnified individually if you're you're going to win 70 games, the whole year. So I hadn't thought about it in those terms.
It gets really tough late in your career too. I remember in 2015, we started the season with Oakland and we traded a bunch of guys, just kind of looking around the clubhouse like, man, I don't know how we're going to win, 70 or 80 this year. So it was really hard for me to take that focus off of not having the mindset of I have to pitch well so I can get traded and go to a winner. I wound up pitching terrible and still getting traded to a winner. But I was I didn't ever build a good season or get hot because my focus was more on myself that year. And I look back at that all the time. Like, it's just not a way to be.
It's tough. It's a great point. It puts it all the pressure on you. Like you were a guy that, at your peak, you were excelling in a specialized role, right? One that even the big baseball fans don't pay that much attention to, right?
Right.
And so then you get that, you sort of start playing in that role where you're in high leverage situations on good teams, and you're getting a lot of usage. By definition, you're a bad team. There's not that many high leverage situations, right? Or it's, you're down 1 or 2. It's still high leverage. You're just on the wrong side of the leverage.
Right. And I just felt like that. My best years in Atlanta, it was like I was throwing the seventh, Johnny was the eighth, Craig was the ninth, but every game was a 1-run game. So all of a sudden, pressure just became normal. It was like I could never give up a run, but that focus is on if I mess up, we lose. Not if I give up a run, my ERA goes up. So it was just it made it so easy to focus on the team's task versus my own kind of personal numbers I was putting up.
Yeah. So what was that switch like for you when you went from Seattle? I mean, hometown kid, West Coast, Seattle. You get to the big leagues with Seattle, right? Before you got claimed off waivers. And then you go over to Atlanta and you kind of took off with the Braves.
Totally different environment.
What stands out to you?
It was a more veteran team in Seattle for sure, but it was kind of that older culture of like you just beat the rookies down and make them that you got to earn your place in the clubhouse.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of good dudes, a lot of good pros on that team, but you never felt like you belonged. Where when I went to Atlanta the first day, Bobby Cox came and sat at my chair. You know, like he's sitting in my chair in my locker and wants to talk to me, giving me the time of day. And this Hall of Famer, right? I came over with a 20-something ERA, kind of a scrap heap pickup. And I'm talking to Bobby Cox for 20, 25 minutes. He gives me his time. I mean, just the confidence that gave me and the comfort. He's telling me, we tried to get you a couple years ago. We wanted you. We couldn't make a deal. We were so happy you're on waivers. In my mind, you know, I'm coming over to camp like, you know, I got to get lucky and make this team somehow. So to hear from Bobby, they actually wanted me a year ago, and he's excited to have me, you know, that pumps me up. And then I'm running into Tim Hudson, Brian McCann, and they're just normal guys. They're treating you like you belong and you're part of the team. So I think just from a confidence standpoint and feeling like I belong, going over to Atlanta was just the perfect landing spot.
What time of year was that? When did you get claimed?
I got claimed in like late November, I think.
Okay, so it was off season.
Yeah, and so this is when I showed up for Camp Roger.
Got it.
Roger used to know that.
Yeah, I remember Camp Roger. Yeah,
Camp Roger. So I got to meet a bunch of guys, and I remember calling my wife like, "This is different. I think this might work for me," just because it was more of a vibe where I felt accepted.
Isn't that amazing, man? I mean, you almost couldn't be further from home, and you walk into this environment in this situation where you're putting all this pressure on yourself. And it sounds like within a day or maybe within a couple hours, like all that's dissipated because of the way people engage with you and just sort of the culture that you get absorbed into.
Yeah, I mean, McCann's one of my favorite people all time. I learned so much from him and also watching Bobby, but they made everyone around him feel good. And they might have, you know, some personal issues with this guy, but they wouldn't show it because they knew they needed him. You know, Bobby see you in the hall every day, and I could give up 3 the night before, and Bobby tell me, "Way to go!" Oh, like, wait, you know, I came to the field struggling, you know, right. Kind of embarrassed, had a bad game. Bobby high fives you and tells you, "Way to go!" I'm like, Well, if he's not worried about it, why would I be worried about it?
Yeah,
you know, he believes in me. All right, give me the rock tonight. I'll go throw some strikes. And BMAC was the same way, where he would just tell everybody how awesome they were constantly, to the point where it almost felt kind of overdone. But when you're hearing it from a guy that's a silver slugger, you know, all-star catcher, and he's telling you, "Hey, you have a really good slider. All right, just hit my glove. You don't have to make it better. You don't have to do anything special. Just throw that pitch." Just kind of the confidence I absorbed, and knowing those guys believe in me, it was like I just had to go out there and push the button and be me.
Yeah. That's freeing, right? You don't have to do anything other than be yourself. So that's a great lesson in leadership from those guys. And it just speaks to, I mean, I heard all these stories about Bobby over the years. You pick the big name guy with checkered past who comes into the clubhouse, you know, and there were he managed some big personalities over the years. And they all, from what I've gathered, they all fell in line, you know, just because it was one of those, you don't want to disappoint Bobby kind of things, you know, because he just treated you so well and you respected him so much. And he just had that way about him. He was able to build that connection, build that relationship with pretty much everybody that walked through that door. To your point, whether he really liked you and wanted to go have dinner with you or not was kind of irrelevant.
He understood the importance of how he made you feel.
Yeah.
He understood what that does for you. And like, yeah, he was, for me, just, I had another situation where that same Camp Roger, I forgot my shower shoes. And you remember Bill Akery.
Yeah.
If you're a young guy and you mess up, Bill Akery's going to let you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
He saw me walk in kind of timid, and everybody already kind of warned me about Bill Acree when I tried to borrow some shower shoes. And, they're like, you're going to get worn out in there, buddy. You should just shower barefoot. I go in there and I'm kind of stumbling over my words, asking Bill, like, I know I'm supposed to have shower shoes. And Bobby kind of sees him just, winding up to lay into me for just being a dumb rookie.
Uh-huh.
And Bobby shoes off his feet, handed them to me, gave me a pat on the butt, and told me to get out of there. He knew, he's known Bill's not going to mess with him. He'll just give him another
Yeah,
pair. But I
right.
stopped the shoes. I
That's
keep them.
great. I
Yeah.
love that. I love this. So you go on this run, you get into that rhythm, and you talked about Venners and Kimbrel, and I mean that you guys at your peak were pretty special with that late inning trio. Um, you go through, you're kind of loogie guy, then you start going full innings, and you're cruising pretty good, and then you break, right? Where were you? How old were you? At what point in your career did you blow out?
I was 28. So 2012, I think it was about August. I started having a little bit of elbow pain. And they just said, we should look at it just so we know where you're at. And I had what they call a T tear. So it's not a full tear, but it's like the ligament's starting to go. But I was on a roll. And I told the trainer, Jeff Porter, I said, look, I'm putting up numbers right now. We're winning. I'm not like, if I'm pitching and getting outs, let's keep this going. And it honestly, about 2 or 3 weeks after that, it was sore a little bit. We kind of had to manage it. It went away. And then spring training 2013, it was just not the same. Wasn't hurting, but I was throwing like 86, 87. Ball was didn't have a lot of life on it. And it just gradually got worse from there. And then I stopped getting out. In 13, I started kind of giving up some home runs and balls I shouldn't, making pitches that in situations that were hurting us. And so I went and talked to him again, and they did another MRI on it, and it was like 10 times worse, and we need to fix it.
I've heard you talk about kind of the rehab on that being one of the hardest things you've had to go through.
Rehab in general. I mean, I spent too much time in the training room those last 4 years of my career. But,
Yeah.
that was like one of the cool things about it was when I was coming toward the end and I had nothing left in Atlanta in 17. I remember Snitker told Copy, he said, we got to get this guy to 10 years because I was hard on myself, really hard on myself over those years. But when I look back at the workload from 9 to 13, not only are you pitching in 50 to 70 games a year, you're also warming up another 25, 30 times. So Snitker kind of just went in there and talked to him and just said, if we can get this guy to 10 years, we should try somehow. But I had nothing left. I was getting shelled. They pretty much said, look, you could rehab and try to find some new pitches and stuff. We'll give you a month. And after that month, we'll see how you look. If you're looking good, maybe we'll activate you again. If not, you're probably getting released. And I was like, cool with me. But I knew that they had ridden me so hard. I didn't feel bad about knowing there probably wasn't a job at the end of this
Yeah.
tunnel for me. But, it was just a nice way to kind of repay me for the workload, I guess.
Yeah. No, that's a good way to put it. And yeah, man, I mean, you talk about a lonely job down in the bullpen, especially as a specialist. You're the dry humps you guys go through out there, and sometimes phone rings and you're like, all right, you're in, and you got 4 pitches and you're in, right? And so I don't think people could. I mean, there's not a lot of professions that can sort of relate to that, right? Where it's like maybe firemen, right, where the bell rings and you got to go. First responders. That's why you train as much as you do, but that's it's gonna take its toll on it. And to your point, like you're going good, you're not gonna mess with it. Don't open me up. I don't want to know what's inside. And then as soon as that changes, you're not going so good. Okay, maybe cut me up.
And I never really got it back. It never really felt the same after that. That was probably the hardest part was coming back to Atlanta, and you're dealing with, it's not like I don't know how to pitch. I can't. Like I'm trying to do all the same stuff. The ball's just not doing what it's supposed to. I'm hitting the same button and the ball's not sinking. But trying to be a leader and trying to build guys up and take on more of that veteran role while you have this personal struggle. I mean, I would go to the field every day and I'd figured it out. I looked at some stuff. I got it today. This is what's been wrong. And I try it and I just, throw a pillow to the guy I'm playing catch with. Meanwhile, you got all these guys that are in the position I was in early in their career, and they need somebody to kind of buddy up with them and tell them how good they are. So fighting that battle, I always wish I could go back and be a better person during that period, because I didn't feel like I showed my true self and who I was, but I also hadn't gone through what I was going through in a long time.
Yeah. That's hard, man. I've always had a lot of appreciation for the older veterans who kind of know where they are, right? Like in their career path, it's toward the end, whether it's because of age or injury or deteriorating skills or what have you, right? And they're still able to be that leader to make the club better. Maybe less so on the field, more so off the field, relative to what they used to do in the younger days. But that's tough when you're still kind of battling it. Right? I mean, I went through that in college, nowhere near where you did it, but I had shoulder surgery and I could always throw a little bit as a catcher. And I remember what you were talking about. That's what I was thinking. I remember coming up and firing. I caught opening day probably months before I should have played. And I came up, some guy stealing, and I throw it, pew, just out of sight. And I'm like, what was that?
Right.
Right? Yeah. You do everything right, and it just doesn't fire anymore. And that it takes a mental toll on you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was you're not sleeping. You're used to being able to do this thing, and you can't do it anymore. But meanwhile, we had a lot of young relief pitchers. We had Fulte, who was trying to figure it out. I think one of the most important things I learned was from Bobby and B-Mac, how to make people feel good. I noticed with like that next generation, that next tier of players that came up, you couldn't ride them like the vets rode us. You had to earn their trust, be their buddy. And once they trusted you, then you could address these issues like, hey, you can't be showing up late. You can't be doing this. But if you were just the guy that was always on them, they just hated you and didn't respect you.
Yeah, it was interesting to watch that, because we would even see it from the front office perspective. It's like, you just can't, it sounds like I'm an old man on my soapbox, but it's like, you just can't talk to kids the same way you used to. Right. And I struggle with that a lot. I mean, whether it's coaching my kids or like being a parent or whatever, and you're fighting a losing battle, right? There's more of them than there are of you. And if you keep just beating your head against the wall, you're going to lose and you're just going to get frustrated. Yep. And so you got to meet them where they are.
Yeah. That was the big change I saw was when I got called up, most guys were between 28, 36, somewhere in there. And then toward the end of my career, you're outnumbered as a guy in your 30s. Yeah. The game got a lot younger fast. So they had 5 or 6 guys to talk about, like, what's O'Flaherty being a jerk for today? Or what's his problem?
Yeah.
Now you're outnumbered. And so I kind of picked up on that quick of like, let me go eat with these guys. Let me talk to them. That, they were into video games. Let me go play these. They can beat me up in whatever game they're playing, but let me pal up with these guys, earn their trust. And then I can tell them these things that they really need to hear, but they're not going to hate me for it. Or if I just walk up to them and say it, you need to do this better. You're doing that wrong. It's not going to be received well, but when they're your buddy and they look up to you, now you can guide them any which way you want.
Yeah. It's a little bit like the okay boomer kind of response to stuff, when they think you're just trying to tell them what to do, they don't want to hear it. But if they can actually embrace the fact that you're looking out for their best interests, it's just a different conversation. Did you watch a lot of baseball growing up? Like as a kid, did you watch a lot of big league baseball?
Yeah. Not a whole game. I watched, I fell asleep to SportsCenter every night back when ESPN used to actually play highlights instead of people talking, it's like, right. I put that on, they'd play all the highlights from the game. So I knew all the players. I'd probably watch 1 or 2 Mariners games a week, but I wanted to be moving. I wanted to be outside. My childhood was like wiffle ball, pickup basketball, riding your bike, that stuff constantly. So sitting and watching a game wasn't necessarily, you did that at the end of the day if it was on.
Yep. Yeah. I asked because I just had this actually realization myself recently. Like, I obviously watched a ton of baseball later in life, but I didn't watch a lot as a kid. Like my son's 8. And I'm like, he likes baseball, but he doesn't like, there's a lot he doesn't know. He's 8 years old. I'm like, hey, buddy, sit down. Let's watch a game. He's like, sit there for 3 hours or whatever.
I'd
Um,
say one. I coach a lot of kids. Maybe 1 out of 10 actually knows where the ball's supposed to go, knows
yeah,
what a bump play. Like there's some kids that just they take to it and they love it. But my boys didn't get into watching baseball until the Mariners went to the playoffs last year. We went to a game and now they want to know everything.
yeah, that's cool. And the
Mhm.
reason I asked when you were talking about the younger kids in the clubhouse is like, yeah, I just remember growing up, like you idolized big league players, you looked up to them, and you knew who they were. And right, and if you got into a big league clubhouse who got used to watching TV, you're like, holy smokes, like this is a big deal. Now I just feel like that novelty is almost not there. I just there's so much more attention for people's or competition for people's attention. I don't think people watch as much of the game. They're not as clued in. You know, I remember like you would introduce. I mean, the Braves are a great example. Right? You would introduce these all these legends that come back for spring training, right? And half of them are in the Hall of Fame, and there's like
Yeah,
no response. When you look at these kids, they're like they have no idea who this human being is in front of them. So I was just like, golly, this is different.
it is. Yeah, I felt like that. Part of what wore that off was social media. Gave the guys a lot bigger chance to show everybody we're all the same and human. You see some of the stuff guys do, and then everything they mess up off the field, the stuff they're posting. Uh, I don't feel like that illusion of them just being these stars is there anymore. They're looked at a little different. And then, yeah, you're right. It's like a attention span thing. But my kids love Otani. They see what he does. They hear about him. He's got all the hype. They love Julio Rodriguez, their favorite player here in Cal Raleigh. But I faced in my major league debut, I faced Frank Thomas, Eric Chavez, and Mark Kotze. And when Frank Thomas got in the box, it was like, one of those surreal moments where I had to check myself. I'm really doing this. I'm really here. I
Yeah.
played video games as Frank Thomas. I'd watched him in All Star games, watched all his stuff, and it was like I am the same. Where I looked at those guys as like just another tier of human. They were just above everybody else, and I think that is gone in a sense.
How'd you fare against Big Hurt?
Walked him. I wouldn't mess
Probably a
with him.
safe move.
His legs look like tree trunks.
Did you have any teammates like that? Like guys that you were a little bit like starstruck by initially when you were younger, that you got to know him a little bit and you're like, it's just a regular dude. I'm not that impressive after all.
Everybody. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like you learn that with everybody. So, like, after being around so many, I guess, famous people and people that are on TV and whatnot, I'm never impressed anymore by somebody had dinner with so and so. It's like, was he cool? Was he grounded? I always just want to know what people are really like because I think you get this, and I would say Ichiro was like that when I got into the clubhouse the first time. You walk by Ichiro. I mean, that's unreal. You're in the same room, and this guy's going to do his job, and you're on the same team. Ichiro was like that. Beltre was a lot like that. I met Griffey in San Francisco in the hotel lobby in 2007, and I couldn't even talk. Like that's how much I idolized Griffey growing up. And when I got to Atlanta and got to really know people, I'm eating with Chipper Jones and Tim Hudson and Brian McCann, and it's like, all right, these guys are cool. They're just like us, and I think baseball has the highest rate of normal, humble dudes because the game's so hard.
It's a humbling game. Yeah. Right.
Humbling game.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Um, Even the good ones, right? They go through some really rough stretches.
Yeah.
When you were sixth round out of high school, right? So drafted as a starter. At what point did you make the shift to the pen?
So 04, that first year in low A, I was a starter. It went okay. Then I hurt my back and missed the rest of that season. And when I came back, it was kind of just one of those things where I'd be good for 1 or 2 innings and then it'd stiffen up. So it's just kind of a natural progression of them being like, you got a good slider, you have a good fastball. Let's throw you in the pen and see how it goes. And that's kind of when things took off for me.
Okay. How'd you like that transition? I mean, was it, did you like it? Do you want to be a starter? Do you embrace it?
I don't, man. There's just nothing going through my head at 19.
That's a good point.
I'm just doing what they told me to do, and I'm doing my best. And I just think when I really started closing for that team, and it was like, if I get these 3 outs, we win. And like I said, I'm on a group that really appreciates it, and they want to win too. Then I felt like I had, a job on the team and I was contributing. When you're the seventh man in the pen and pitching in blowout games and A ball, it's not as stimulating, I guess. So when I started doing that, then I started watching. That offseason was the year that Bobby Jenks was just on fire for the White Sox. So now I'm watching baseball and I'm putting myself in Bobby Jenks' shoes and thinking about staying calm and what he's feeling right there. That's probably when I started closing for the Timber Rattlers in A ball. That's when I really started loving baseball.
What talk me through that a little bit. What was your process? What was your ritual for kind of keeping yourself calm, keeping yourself focused in high leverage situations?
I didn't have one yet. I mean, later in my career, I developed it when I realized like a good pitch is a good pitch. Physics don't change because there's bases loaded or we're up by one. And that was stuff I just learned with experience. But in the lower levels of the minors, I was throwing a 94 cutter. So it was like I could afford to be kind of amped up, and I was always fist pumping and losing my mind and way too amped up, but I was just good enough that I got away with it. When I got to the big leagues and tried to have that same energy and I'm going to overpower Pujols with my cutter, it's like you're not beating him if you're not beating Pujols on this. So
Uh-huh.
then I had to learn how to like actually pitch, control my mind, and think through situations.
So it
But
was more
minor
of a
leaguers,
it was more of a throttle back for you than a pump yourself up. Hey, real quick, if you're getting value from the show, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, and if you're so inclined, go ahead and leave a 5-star review while you're at it. It helps more people like you find this podcast, and honestly, that simple form of support, it makes a difference. All right, back to the conversation. So one thing that I want you to walk me through. I don't think people that are outside of the game can appreciate. You warm up, you get to the ballpark at whatever, call it 1 o'clock in the afternoon, right, for a 7 o'clock game. You might spend all that time getting ready. You might get in the game, and you might throw one pitch, right?
right?
In your role. And then you're done.
Right.
Maybe you did it well. Maybe you didn't do it well. Maybe the results were there. Maybe it weren't. But either way, you threw one pitch and you're done. Like, talk through that a little bit for somebody who can't appreciate what that feels like. One pitch after all that time.
I always say, relief pitchers are like air conditioners. Nobody appreciates you. Nobody notices you break. I mean, that's pretty much the life is like, you have to be okay with that, right? Like if you want the spotlight as a relief pitcher, you're in trouble. You have to be okay. You have to accept that if I blow this game, everybody's going to hate me. And you have to be able to evaluate yourself outside of results. Did I come in and make a good pitch and I gave up a broken bat single and we lost? Do I suck? No, I had a bad break today. And vice versa. I remember coming into a game against the Mets, Beltran, Ike Davis. I can't remember. It was like Beltran, Reyes, 3 guys just put balls to the track and I get a hold and I put up a 0, but I'm looking at like, dude, you got lucky today.
Yeah.
You skated through that. You need to make an adjustment. So I'd say like learning how to evaluate yourself outside of results was huge. And I didn't learn that until probably 2 to 3 years into my career because your results matter so much. But you can't evaluate yourself based like your performance based on what happens because you can give up 2 bleeders, yada, 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 and you give up a 3 spot. But that takes the pressure off is knowing like what you can control. So if I'm prepared, I know what I want to throw to this guy and I stay calm and I execute, there's a lot out of my hands. And if you can evaluate yourself based on did you stick to your plan and execute versus did things go well, it takes a lot of that roller coaster out of it.
Yeah, focus more on the process than the results.
It is hard because if you give up 3, you might get sent down. It's like, hey, great process, buddy.
Well, look, yeah, right, great process for shit results. And look, that's hard, I think, in baseball for everybody. It's hard enough if you're a starter, you're going to go throw 6 innings. It's harder if you're an everyday player, you're going to get 4 at-bats in a game. But you might get 1 pitch, right? You're in there. When you coming in, I'm facing this hitter only. This is all I got. So there's 0 margin of error. And then, I guess the beauty of baseball is if it doesn't go well for you, you get tomorrow. That's one thing I always, I don't know what the right word is, but empathized, I guess, with people that play like football, where you're playing once a week.
Yeah,
coaching, executives, players, all of it's like, man, if it has, you got a bad ending to your last game, you got to stew on that. I know you can say flush it and move on to the next week, but you don't get another chance to get at it again for another week. Baseball, at least, it's like, okay, next day we'll strap it up.
that's probably why being a reliever worked well for me too. Is you can turn the page and today I can go get it done. Um, I think though that's like you see a lot of big leaguers, kids coming up and playing now. And I think those messages and that mindset, it's not just hearing it, saying it, turn the page, but explaining it in depth. That car ride, that's all I talk to my kids about is mindset and how to handle failure, how to not ride the roller coaster constantly. And my son goes out there, he can give up five, straight face, just chilling. He knows he knows he's got another game in a week. And then you can watch some of these other kids strike out in their first at bat and their day's shot and they're crying. And so I think that's the big advantage you're seeing is not so much, mechanical cues and whatnot, but these mindsets that are being passed down from guys that learned. And I don't care who you are, like there's a mindset that you have to succeed consistently in the big leagues. So guys that do that for a long time are really able to pass down so much knowledge.
Yeah, and you see it. You see it with kids. It was always like, we'd sit in draft rooms and you talk. He's got good, genealogy behind him to help him, and you kind of like how much stock do you really put into that. And some of the kids, right, that it doesn't, it skipped a generation as far as like the between the ear stuff. But some of them, you're just like, man, this guy's a rat. He gets it in the best possible way. And I mean, you just even look at it with kids, look, if you're a kid, you're a kid, you're immature, you're not expected to be able to regulate your emotions, your feelings. All these people that call themselves competitive and they want to win. And in reality is like, you only want to compete if you know you can win, or you have a very high likelihood of winning. That's not really competing. Competing is you want to go play, you want to do your best. And if you don't, to your point, your son walks off. He's like, all right, I'll go get him next time. But,
What can I
and
get better at?
right. What do I mean, look, it's tough to hear this when you're 8, 9, 10 years old, but like you learn a hell of a lot more from losing than you do from winning, and I think that's such a great analogy for life. And there's so many people that my wife and I talk about this a lot. You run into people, and again, the old man, get off my lawn. They tend to be younger than us, and you just have a conversation, and you're like, person just is not going to be able to cope with life. They don't have the skills to like just deal with it. And I don't know how else to, sort of categorize it, but you're like, if that person encounters like real adversity, which everybody does, like
Mm-hmm.
genuine concern, like how are you going to bounce back from that? That's where I always like athletes just have such a advantage and such like an ace up their sleeve when it comes to that stuff. Cause it's like, you've all failed, you've all, succeeded, you know how to bounce back from it, and you can just lean on that. And when I got out of the industry, I realized not everybody has that. And that's a huge asset. Forget as an athlete, but just like as a human being for the rest of your life.
Well, and that's one thing that you forget because you're just surrounded, especially if you get to the high levels of baseball, you're surrounded by pros, people that handle everything like a pro. Their day's not going to be wrecked if someone cuts them off on the highway. They they're just going to let it, roll off their back. And then you get out of that area where everybody handles everything, everybody's got this winning mindset, and you try to adjust to. For me, that was the biggest adjustment. You're trying to make friends and you joke with them and their feelings are hurt and they hate you now. Like, I'm in the all we do is rip on each other because everybody's got to know what's wrong with them. Everybody's got to be able to evaluate themselves and be accountable. And if you're late, you get ripped on, right? And then you go out there and I'm in the stands at a little league game or something like that, and there's people losing their minds in the first inning of 8-year-old game. Like, what is going on out here?
Yeah, it's funny the perspective that you get, and I've just noticed that as sort of my journey with my son, my older son, and the people that you just gravitate toward people that have a similar life view, right? Like whether you were an athlete or not, you just sort of have that mentality, and inevitably the people that have that mentality, like they tend to, we're not going to all do it the same way or have the same thoughts on it, but generally speaking, we're going to see it through the same prism, right? It's like this is the actual goodness that's going to come out of this experience. Not I went 3 for 4 with the game winning RBI. It's like this is what really matters. And yeah, it's tough to. It's almost like you're just two different. You're speaking two different languages at that point, and you're like, look, just kind of agree to disagree on it. Let's go play and see what happens. But we're just going to try to draw out separate lessons from this experience.
Yeah, you'll find if you work on people, you can get across to them. You can get through to them and kind of convert them, I'd say, to just chilling out and enjoying it. But yeah, you're right. It's there's some parts where you're just like, man, all right, you go that way, I'm going this way.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yep. Well, I mean, you talked about some of the guys you walked into the Braves clubhouse and even the Mariners to a lesser extent. Like, I've got one rule in my kids' team: it's you be a good teammate. Like, that's it. I don't care what else you do. I don't care if you go 4 for 4, you strike out 4 times. Like, but you're going to be a good teammate. And it's just awesome to see with kids, especially because they're so innocent and like fun loving. Like, somebody hits a home run and there's an absolute dog pile at home plate because they're just so excited about it. And then you
Genuine.
see, yeah, it is. It's genuine. They're so excited about it. And then, you see the other side of that on sometimes, probably more so with adults than kids. And it's just like, man, we're wearing the same uniform, but we're not really teammates.
Yeah, that's a no go for me. If I find anybody, adults that are kind of like competitive with whose kid's better and that stuff, it's like that's a hard line. We're never going to be close. These are innocent little kids out there, and you're hoping my son has a bad inning, so yours can be the number one starter. Like, what are you doing, man? You're rooting against a 9-year-old.
Yeah. Right,
That
right.
kind of that for me is just a hard stop.
Yeah. What did Bobby teach you? I mean, what did Bobby? You talked a little bit about his sort of, I guess, emotional intelligence, right? Like understanding the impact of how he made you feel and what that could do for your performance in your career. Like, what about in game, in the heat of the moment? What was he really good at with pitchers?
You could hear him on the mound. You could hear him. Ball one, you're hearing, "Come on, oh, you got this." I mean, almost like a little league coach, and that's
Yeah.
kind of how I try to be for kids and everything, and my son especially. But you go 1-0 on somebody, and you can hear Bobby cheering for you. Hall of Famer, I mean, just he always had your back. He always pumped you up. He always made you feel good. I know I said that earlier, but there's just so much value in making somebody feel good and making them comfortable versus the opposite end of the spectrum. I played on another team. I was struggling, and the manager would go out and talk to everybody in the outfield. He'd see a couple of us, me and another reliever that were struggling, and his route would change. He'd go to second base and then out to center if we're shagging. And I mean, that's the opposite message, right? Like that's reinforcing that I'm struggling. I'm already aware of it. I already know I'm down. Just you coming out, and Bobby would come right up to you and tell you, "Great job, way to go." I mean, that takes so much pressure off. So for me, that's real leadership is when you're in that position of power, using it to build people up, make them feel good, even if you're not 100% happy, they're struggling, understanding the importance of somebody's mindset. And he always did.
Yeah. I mean, in such a game of failure at the confidence level, I mean, it's really hard to quantify that, but it, I mean, we had conversations with 1 or 2 people in the front office, and we have a conversation about maybe a roster move, and they're like, I don't know, do you think he's going to see it coming? I'm like, I mean, he's got eyes. He was at the game last night too. He knows he's not going good. Like he's not going to be shocked. He'll be disappointed, but just be honest with him, right? Like, don't say you'll be back in 2 weeks if he's got some stuff to figure out. Like, just be honest. I mean, every one of you guys was the best in the world at what you did, and to not appreciate that it takes something to get there beyond just a physical gift, right? Like all the other stuff that comprises being a professional. Like, of course he's going to know. He sees you coming in the office. He's going to be shit.
Yeah. I knew my last game. I think I gave up 8 to the Mets, and it was already. I mean, we were way down already. It wasn't like there had been hope. It was just the same story over and over, and this one was worse. I just took a good look walking off the field, and I said, "This is it, buddy." Like if they let you pitch another game, they are crazy, or they just love you way too much. But you do not deserve right now to throw another major league pitch this season. You got a lot to work on, and I just took it in. Was like, this is it. Kind of it was good because I knew and I kind of soaked it in and appreciated it. But at the same time, it's not like when Snit I got out of the field quick that day, But
Uh,
Snick called me on my way home. He's like, "I need you to come back," and I was like, "I know."
need you to come back. Sorry, I'm already home.
Yeah.
So you knew it was coming. Did it give you closure? I mean, Snit's great, so I'm sure he handled that super well. But it's still hard, right? It's still a hard something to hear and to kind of absorb.
Yeah, I mean, I knew it. My struggle was just trying so hard to get back to where I was, and just, my body couldn't do it anymore. It took me probably 2 years to love baseball again. And it actually happened. I went and played beer league softball, and I was a god out there. You know, you 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 got guys swinging as hard as they can to hit it like 3 hop the fence, and I can just flick it over the fence.
Uh huh.
And that my experience was always like 24th, 25th man on the roster, scraping
Yeah.
by,
Right.
and you're surrounded by these guys that can do stuff you just can't do. They could show up hungover eating an egg McMuffin, and they're gonna hit 3 homers. I'm doing everything I can just to stay in this league. So to flip that and get to go out on a field and be the best, and there's no pressure, right? It's like,
Right.
oh no, we're tied in the sixth inning of a beer league softball game, and you could see guys getting worked up and over swinging and stuff. I'm just strolling up there. If I touch this, it's gone.
Yeah.
So I guess just being on a field, no pressure, that that for me made me love the game again. I started watching the game again and enjoying it. But those last 2 years, just, I mean, playing in quicksand basically was like, I mean, it was torture. It was so hard on me mentally.
Well, you did it for so long at such a high level, it becomes who you are, right? It's like your identity. Instead of what you do, it becomes who you are. And then that gets taken away from you essentially. And so now it's like, okay, who am I? Right. You got to kind of have to reinvent yourself to some extent. And I can see that. I mean, I always try to stay close to, like the performance staff on teams and trainers. One, just generally, I enjoyed spending time with them. I mean, they tended to be curious and talented and like just good human beings, right? They were in it to, nobody's in that profession to get rich or to be famous. They're in there because they want to help people and be a part of a team, and compete. And man, I had a lot of conversation, just like, hey, how's so and so doing? They're just like,
He ain't good.
no bueno, he's in a bad place, and it's like,
Yeah.
in my roles is like, there's only so much, there's not too much you can do about it, but you just wanted to know, right? Like how are they holding up? I mean, you would see it. It was easier to get in on that with the minor league level, when we try to spend time with kids and like, almost like you're a parent, right? Teach a lot of these kids, they don't struggle until they get to the big leagues, right? And then there's 40,000 people watching. You're on national TV. Now, how do you
Get
bounce
smacked.
back, right? Like that's
Yeah.
tough. So like just getting a little bit of a pulse for like the makeup, the character, resiliency, all this stuff that you can't see on a scouting report. It's like sometimes you find out the hard way and there's no coming back from it. And those guys always seem to have a pretty good pulse on like, this guy will be fine. Don't worry. Just give him a couple days. He'll be okay. Others, it's like, might want to find the
Yeah,
alternative
right.
in AAA, right?
Well, I mean, I can always see it. I watch a lot on TV now, and I can see it in their eyes. The dude making his debut, or a dude that's kind of been struggling, you could see that look in their eyes. Deer in the headlights, or just dead inside, crushed by the game already, and they're battling through an inning. Like, and then you can see I see other guys come up and they look calm, they look comfortable, and I'm always like, that's the dude. They need to ride this guy. He is not sweating right now. He's treating it like another game. He's calm. And then the guy that's deer in the headlights, he might skate through an inning, but eventually he's given up a 5 spot and the wheels are going to fall off. But I don't know if you could see that. I could always see it in their eyes.
Yeah, I mean, you can't live. Relievers are a great example of that, right? But every night can't be a high wire act. You
No.
can't just be like heart racing, frothing at the mouth, the whole thing, because eventually it's like you're going to get shelled one night. That adrenaline's going to leave your body, and then what happens? And yeah, it's always the guys that make it look easy, right? The cool guys that it is like kind of like a duck in the pond, right? Like they may look it easy, but they're busting their ass, right? They're the first one at the park. They're putting in the work, extra film time, extra weight room time, whatever it is. And so again, focus more on process and results. They know that we're good. Like, I'm going to put a good swing on this. We're going to see what happens, or I'm going to make my pitch and hopefully he misses. But if he doesn't, we'll be okay. But I mean, I didn't play in the big leagues, right? That's easy for me to say. It's really, really hard to do, when it's your identity, right? When it's wrapped up in who you are, everything you've done since you were 6 years old.
Yeah, momentum, so much of it too. I mean, it's like you said, you're going to send a guy down. He knows he's struggling. It's not a surprise, and when you're rolling, and it just starts to take so much pressure off. As far as like those I remember McCann coming out to the mound. It had to be either bases loaded or second and third and one out. It was definitely bases loaded because we got a double play. But I was in my first year there, and he could see it in my eyes. So he jogs out to the mound. And he goes, "Hey, if you make the pitch here, the hitter's going to do what he's supposed to. You got a good two-seamer. Hit my glove. We're going to get out of this." And I kind of just took the mind like, well, he's saying this is the pitch. Now it's on him.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a chance here. I'm
Yeah.
hitting that glove. I'm not going to try to do too much. I'm going to believe in myself. I'm going to believe what he said. I throw this two-seamer down and away in Philly, get a ground ball, double play. And it was like, I didn't know it could be that simple. I didn't know that it's just execution. And the more times you get in those situations where it just comes down to, if you make a pitch, the hitter does what they're supposed to. That eventually I got to a point where that was just my mindset. The hitter's going to do what they're supposed to if I make a pitch. So I'm in a lot more control of this situation than it feels like sometimes, but I have to stay me. It's when you try to do more or you're nervous that you fall apart. And you could see that look in a guy's eyes. Like, he doesn't know what he's supposed to do right now. He thinks he has to be better. He's going to try to do too much. He's going to hang a slider. Now we're down 4.
Yeah. It's rarely is the right answer. Try harder, right? Like in baseball, yep. It's like golf. Like, don't swing harder. Don't do that. Yeah. And that's what the really good ones do. It's the difference between getting in the big leagues, right? And just staying on that minor league shuttle, and the guys that carve out 10-year careers like you did, or guys that go in the Hall of Fame. Like, I feel like at every iteration, the numbers may not be precise, but they do it 1% better, but they do it 1% better every single time. And you do that over 162, and you're like, whoa, there's a big difference between these players. I mean, how many guys did you see in AA and AAA that just could hit the light tower at BP or could throw 100 in a bullpen, and then just the lights come on and they couldn't do it, or they couldn't do it consistently?
Well, that had to be the hardest part of your job. I would think, from my position, if I were to be an assistant GM or high up in the front office, that would be the hardest part of my job, would be trying to guess who's going to handle the bright lights. Because you get that third deck, you get the Jumbotron, everything changes. And I don't know what situation you could consistently put guys in to be able to evaluate how they're going to handle that transition. But I honestly, I don't know what matters. You could get to know guys' mindset. I don't know what matters until the bright lights come on. Like, who can handle that?
Yeah. And look, how do you, failing in AA, right? Blowing a save in Wisconsin is one thing, media, right? But like doing it in Atlanta, it's different, right? And how do you, I've got a buddy that played in the big leagues and scouted, and he's like, you're not a big leaguer until you really fail at the big leagues and then bounce back from that. Exactly. Because how many guys come up and have a cup of coffee and set the world on fire for a week or a month or 6 months, and then it's like never to be heard from again? There is such a balance between what goes on between the ears. And I'll tell you, the thing I always wrestled with was, you want the fearless, confident, non-thinker, I'm the best player out there, right? Like that guy. But at the same time, what does that guy do when he fails, right? You also need some humility underneath there, some self-awareness, to be able to realize when you got to make an adjustment, or maybe realize that you haven't been working as hard as you used to because you've had some success or whatever it may be. But it's like a really fine line, because you get too much humility, self-awareness, you start thinking too much and you're in trouble. So that was always the thing for me, was trying to manage that in the minor leagues, looking at it. And like, we did some stuff. We did it with the Braves when you were there, but we did it with some minor league players who wound up being on that team that won the World Series. But you just put them in situations where they're going to be extremely uncomfortable, and it had nothing to do with baseball. It's just, how are you guys going to respond to that?
What kind of situations?
Well, we took like a dozen kids to a leadership development camp right after the minor league season ended. So these kids were gassed, and Some of them had to go to instructs after. And so they think like it was all this whole thing where they got a letter. We tried to make it as like covert as possible. They didn't know where they were going. They show up to this beach house in Florida. It's like this kind of like rundown old beach house. And they think it's going to be like, the real world summer vacation or something for a weekend. I'm going to barbecue with the boys and whatever. And then, we put them through 3 days that were pretty intense. A lot of sort of more, I would say more mental than physical. We did some physical stuff to kind of tire them out and to kind of put them under stress. It wasn't like you're not lifting logs in the ocean or anything like the Navy SEALs, but we did some stuff. And I was one of the people that did it with them because we needed them to know that like the analogy I was like, this wasn't like police academy where you're riding around in the golf cart, like with the megahorn in the bullhorn screaming at people. They needed to know that we were in it with them and that we were going to kind of suffer along with them. And it was a really cool experience. And some of these kids, a couple of them kind of showed their ass and broke halfway through it. And some of them persevered. And the kid that you thought was kind of soft and wasn't like, he winds up being the superhero of the whole thing. He was just quiet. And the guy that you thought was the big tough guy, he kind of shrunk when it was like pressure time, so you learned a lot. I'm not to say it's like a 1-to-1 analogy, but my whole thought behind it at the time and the group that helped put it together was like, these kids need to know how to fail and they need to know how to respond to adversity. And if we're going to build toward this being the core group to hopefully win a championship someday, that's, in my mind, that's a pretty important part. The resiliency, the awareness, the teammate gene, to be able to communicate. Like everybody's an alpha, you can all lead, but do you guys know when it's time to follow, and like all the stuff that you probably figured out as a young major leaguer because you had veterans to kind of shepherd you along and tell you and show you. But to your point earlier, that didn't exist as strongly as it did at one point. So it was kind of like the message was like, look, guys, if we're going to win a world championship, this is going to be your clubhouse. It doesn't matter what Snit says. It doesn't matter what the GM or the manager says. Like, it's your clubhouse. Because when we turn our backs and walk out, like, you guys can snicker and say whatever, or you can say game on, let's go. So that was kind of the goal, was to like really like sharpen them up and bond that group and just like let the whole tagline we used is get comfortable being uncomfortable, and just, you're going to have to do some public speaking. You're going to have to do some stuff that like you've never had to do. You may never have to do again, but you're going to have to adhere to just like sweat through it and be nervous for 30 minutes, And so it was a really cool experience for us, even the ones that put it on. I think it was a valuable experience for the kids, but we were just trying to come up with ways to figure out like what's in their chest, like what's in their head, because the talent's obviously there.
For me, it was like, I could not like a guy's personality. We might not have the same views. I might not be going to dinner with him, but if he could go out there on that stage and you got to see what was inside him, I could not help but respect the guy. I mean, it could be somebody I'd never want to hang out with, but I'd admire who they turned into when those bright lights came on. Like you just couldn't help but respect it, especially being in the position, knowing how hard it is. But that was something where there's so many guys I play with that people didn't like, and I'm like, yeah, but look what he does when when the game's on the line, like that. I admire that because it's not easy to do, and the guys that can just flip that switch and get it done. I don't know if it's a gene or if it's trainable, but it's everything.
Yeah, and again, it's like people talk a lot about culture and the environment that you're in and the clubhouse culture and all that, and I'm a huge proponent of it. I think it's wildly impactful, but it's not, hey, I like E, let's go get 24 more of them and stick those guys. Like, it's not a clone factory, right? Like you're trying to build this team. You need every clubhouse needs a couple pricks, like you don't want to go on a family vacation with them, but you want them on the mound on game 7, right? Like whatever it may be. And that's because we are all wired so differently that when it gets to like, I am going to be a killer on the field and I'm going to beat you, that manifests itself in a lot of different ways. Some guys are like, you're still the guy that I want my daughter to marry. Other guys are like, stay the hell away from my kids, but go, go pitch the 7th inning.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's You're right. You have to have a few guys that kind of stir the pot. And Josh Donaldson was like that for me. He he could rub you the wrong way in the clubhouse, but then you'd watch him. I remember him hitting a walk off of Zach Britton, and it's just like that's the toughest sinker to lift in the game at the time. JD goes out and does it. So you tolerate some of the stuff he does in the clubhouse, and you wind up loving these guys because you admire that side of them and who they are, and that they show up to. JD showed up every day to play. He wanted to be in there every day, and that type of stuff. Whatever wiring makes them, a little off the field, that same wiring is part of why they're able to be who they are on the field,
100%.
whether it's confidence or whatever there is about them that makes them special in that area. But you have to have guys like that because it's so contagious. Oh, I can't go today. JD's playing on a rolled ankle. He's got a bad shoulder and he hasn't missed a game all season. My shoulder's a little sore and I can't get one out in the seventh. I'm going. But then if you have a vet who's just only playing when everything's perfect and he's ducking the best pitchers, it's like, I'm also maybe not, maybe I should take a day. That, like, the mindset of your leaders is so contagious.
Well, that was the point we made to these kids in the minor leagues. It was like, the culture in that clubhouse is going to be, the way I defined it was, it's going to be what you tolerate from yourselves and what you tolerate from your teammates.
Mm-hmm.
And that it is incredibly contagious because if guys are taking plays off or not posting, that was the other thing that like it translated to my professional life, right? When you're out scouting or you're pulling late nights, it's like, hey guys, you want to fly a little bit too high the night before? Okay. You're an adult, do what you want. You just better post the next morning. Like
you
better be at our 8:00 meeting at 7:55. Don't roll in there at 8:05,
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing. Like, hey, look, you made some bad decisions last night, but the cops didn't call and, you're with it and you're contributing to what we're trying to do this morning. So we're going to let it roll.
I made some really bad decisions in New York one night and wound up missing the team bus, taking the subway, sweating in my suit. It just looked like hell. Day game. And I walked through those clubhouse doors at Citi Field, and Bobby saw it right away. He's coming up, from early BP. He's coming up the stairs, and I'm going down him. And he goes, "You're in there today." That's him summing up, like, all right, I see what happened.
Yep.
You better get it. And I wound up, I did fine. I went out through like a scoreless inning or something, and I come in, and I told David Ross, I said, I just took a bite of the Big Apple. He goes, "You threw an inning. Calm down, all right?" He goes, "Don't do that again. Next time I see it, we're fighting." And it was like, you can get it done, and it's okay. You better, if you're going to have a late night, you better, what's the saying? Party at night, party during the game or something like that. I don't know the saying, but there's a saying about, if you're going to do that, you better show up and be able to get it done. And that was kind of the message. But you're right. It's like you learn so much about who can get away with it and strap it on and who can't.
Yeah, exactly. And look, it's ultimately it's about results, right? I mean, as much as I want to nerd out about culture and leadership, if you're posting wins and putting points on the board, like that's really all 99% of people care about. Now I tend to believe that all that stuff I just touched on leads to more wins, right? And more points on the board, but sometimes it doesn't. If you just get enough talent, you can get away with it. I don't know how sustainable that is sometimes. Like, if you want to do every time you go to New York, if you're going to howl at the moon, it's probably going to bite you eventually, right? You might be able to get away with it once or twice.
Would you be aware of that? And would you be aware which guys were kind of pushing those limits and maybe we better trade this guy because he's in his early 20s and doing it, but on the backside,
I mean, you would know, like you would know all the stories, obviously, right? Like I always tried to appreciate that, like the clubhouse it's not my place to hang out in, right? Like I'll be in and out, but that's not my environment. But you guys had reputations, right? Usually guys earned reputations. And again, if it was like, look, if you're 24 and single and you're just enjoying being a big leaguer and doing things, like, okay, right? Like to a large degree, that's normal. But it's a matter of degree, right? If you're taking it too far, if you're not taking care of your body, well, it's also like if you're out drinking, you're dehydrating yourself, right? And then like the ripple effects of that, are you hitting the weight room or you're doing your work, like then all of a sudden it starts leading to like legitimate like injury and performance decline. And I've told this story a million times, just I think very highly of the person, but When I was in Arizona, we signed Paul Goldschmidt to his first long-term deal. And Goldie had just finished his first year in the big leagues. He had a solid year, but not like anything crazy. He just tore the minor leagues apart. To your point about like watching guys and how they behave, like he was the mother hen, like or the mother duck, right, in the minor leagues. And you'd watch like good minor league players, guys that want up have good big league careers. They were just whatever he did, they were following him around the cage and they're really working all of it. So you knew he was a leader. You knew he had that presence. And I remember having a conversation with him, just like, look, if I think at worst, this guy is going to be an average everyday major league first baseman, hit the middle of our lineup. Like, and the money we're paying, like that's probably a fair deal. He's got the potential to be a lot more. But this guy's not going to go blow all his money on hookers and coke. You know, like it's just not who he is. He's a good human being. And he wound up to make us look, look like geniuses because the guy finished second in the MVP race the following year. And he wound up winning one later and he's become the Paul Goldschmidt now. But I just bet so hard on the human being at the time. Like it wasn't, I'm saying it was like me, like I wasn't the GM, but like I was so convicted for my vote in that process. Like this is a good human who's going to maximize every bit of talent he has. And he's going to take care of himself off the field. No real concerns. There's not a ton of guys, honestly, that you can say that about because you don't really know a lot of them, right? Especially if you're talking about trades or free agents, like you're flying blind. Like it's like a dating profile, right? You see the picture and you're like, I've seen this guy in person. He doesn't look like that. Like you have like a version of the truth. You try to back channel it and talk to teammates and talk to clubhouse guys and whatever. Like, is this guy for real? But it's an educated guess a lot of times. That's why I would just like the smart teams know what they have. They know them better than what you do, right? Because they've been with them and they lock up the guys that they want, or they try to at least, because they know what they have and they're willing to invest in that as probably as a human being as much as the talent. At least that's my opinion.
That's all I'd want to know. I mean, and it's honestly like the first thing anybody asks when you trade for a big player. You ask their teammates, is this guy cool? What's he like? What are we getting in the clubhouse? Who are we dealing with? And generally, I mean, you get pretty good reviews, but once in a while, they're like, good luck. And you'll follow these guys' careers. They're studs. Their teams are never winning. Their teams are always coming up a little bit short, or they have bad games and big moments. You learn so much about character just watching somebody work every day. That would be the number one thing I'd want to know before, if I was going to sign a guy to a long-term deal or trade for him, is what is going on, between his ears. What's he like?
Yeah. The one thing I would pay attention to is the preparation, right? When a guy is at a field, when's he get there? Is he out there doing work? Is he just laying on the couch, scrolling his phone, and gets dressed right before BP, right? Like, I mean, some guys did that. Some guys are good enough to just do that. But if it's my money, I'm not putting her on that guy, right? Like, the talent has to be so outstanding and so off the charts to carry all of that other, I don't call it baggage, but like the lack of other stuff that we're seeing to warrant that investment. And there's just not that many, guys that are that talented are in the Hall of Fame.
Right. Yeah.
So you touched on a little bit the stuff, what you're trying to like impart on your kids and your boys as they're playing, and as probably more as men more so than athletes. But like, I always appreciate hearing it from people that, not just athletes, but people that have done things at a high level, right? Like that have been elite performers. Like, what are you trying? Like, if what's your legacy going to be with your kids? What do you want them to remember about you by? Or what are like the things that what do you emphasize every night, right? At dinner or before going to bed, or, and anytime, like what are some of the things you stress with your sons?
Jealousy in our house is just not allowed. Like me and my wife both we pounce if they're jealous, if they show that. We try to teach them to build each other up and root for them. But we find that like jealousy is just the worst trait you can have. Nothing good comes from it. Rooting for each other, these are natural instincts, right? They're natural emotions that kids have. But like my oldest son, he can throw the ball. I mean, it's a thing of beauty. It's natural for him. I don't have to say much. He struggles with hitting a little bit. My 8-year-old is like, he just hits bombs. That's what's natural for him. So when those two things come up, it's kind of like, hey, he swung and missed. I'm like, why are you rooting for your brother to swing and miss? You know, and it's instinct for me. It's like that is you're being a bad teammate, you're being a bad brother. But we try to. All the stuff I learned about how to be a good teammate and a human and a winner and a pro in baseball. Those are the things I try to just pass on to them. And I feel like, I would show up to spring training, you're competing with two or three lefties for a spot. Those other two lefties, you'd feel the energy. You're the competition. They hate you. I would go out of my way to let them know how good they look that day and kind of disarm them, right? And then we can be buddies. But nothing good comes from being distracted by hoping somebody else fails. It takes away from you performing yourself. And if you're worried about that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I try to teach them all the stuff, all the lessons I learned, and make them good humans, and make people feel good, compliment people. It's okay to compliment people. They'll like you more if you do, um, competition's healthy, it's good for you, but you can't actually be finding yourself so wrapped up in wanting somebody else to fail that you forget to do your own job. Just things like that. I'm trying to build my own favorite teammates that I had. I'm trying to pass on everything that I learned from Bobby, B Mac, Chipper, Tim Hudson, Peter Moylan, all these traits, how to be loose when there's pressure, how to have fun. Don't ride the roller coaster. Don't ride the ups and downs. Don't let one little thing ruin your day. But I think the stuff you learn in sports just makes life after sports so much easier to navigate. Who knows how long they're going to play? Who knows what baseball looked like for them? But I know these lessons I learned, they apply to life after too. And I think a lot of the former athletes you see that turn into these great leaders and doing big things off the field, it's those traits you learn through sports, how to handle failure and whatnot, that make you a winner. So basically everything I think that makes somebody a winner, I try to pass on to my kids.
Love that. You know what, man? I feel like this is getting worse, and I feel that the values that you're instilling in your boys, I try to instill in my kids as well. Like this competitive, like zero sum environment, whether it's youth sports for some or business world or trying to get into college, like you name it. Like it's almost everything that we're dealing with these days. People that like just give, right? They just give out of like the generosity of their spirit and their heart. And it sounds corny, right? But like the people that you can always count on to root for you, to give you the time of day, to cheer you on. Like, man, it comes back to you in spades later in life. It just does
It
because
does.
you just operate from that place, and like you're gonna be everybody's favorite teammate. You may wind up making a team that you don't have any business being on because like everybody loves you and you make the team better because of who you are as a human being, right? Maybe you're not as talented. And that's not just like sports, right? Like I read this great book about championship teams and how it's kind of like the glue guy concept, right? These players that were the real leaders often weren't the superstars, right? They were the guys that were a little bit behind the scenes, right? There's a reason that so many backup catchers wind up being major league managers, right? And utility players go on to have good coaching careers because they had to maximize it, right? They had to be good teammates. Like, the chippers of the world, like he didn't have to do anything, right? He was just like, I'm not saying he didn't work, but like just naturally blessed, right? Where he could just get away with a lot of stuff that 99% of people couldn't. So I don't know. I love to hear when other people are trying to instill that thing in their kids because it's hard to fall. I should say it's easy to fall into sort of this competitive environment. And I'm all for competing. I just want to compete for the right reasons at the right times, and against your brother's not one of those times, right? Healthy competition is one thing, but rooting against them to fail for some other reason, that's not where we need to be. Too. Yeah, you're damn right.
Yeah, well, Eric Kinsky was our guy like that. I mean, and it's exactly what you're talking about. But I think those are the roles where you learn the most. Like Eric Kinsky would prepare the same every day for a net bat that might not come. And so he's learning how to be ready, what he needs to work on for an opportunity that might not be there day in, day out. But he's also the coolest dude in the clubhouse. He's calling everybody out. He's building everybody up. It makes everything fun. He keeps you loose. You're laughing. There's a reason you see these guys that everybody winds up getting on their team like a David Ross or Eric Hinsky. Their teams are always going deep because there's moments where somebody needs to speak up and say something. And everybody's aware of the momentum. We've lost 3 in a row. Let's all go to dinner. Let's have a good time. Let's forget about it. And then there's guys with they have that certain feel for what's needed in a group to bring the group up. And they're more in tune with the group's energy than maybe a guy that's dealing with the media constantly and doing superstar stuff. But I just, for me, it's like those things that I learned from my time in Atlanta, that first stint there, they prepared me so much for how to handle life and how to handle people. And when I feel things like you're talking about, like competitiveness, if you don't want the best for me, you'll never see me again. That's it. Like everybody I meet, if I can feel that energy that you're not rooting for me and my family, you're gone. I don't care what you can offer, none of it. I don't care what your connections are or how successful you are in some other area of life. I want nothing to do with you because I want to surround myself with this energy of winners and pros and people that build each other up and understand there's enough pie to go around.
No doubt. I think athletes get that for the most part, but yeah, my wife and I have similar conversations. Your social circle shrinks seemingly every year and it bothers her. I'm like, I'm good with it. You get older, you figure out what you're willing to tolerate, what you're not. The energy transfer on that stuff is real. And you got 3 kids, you're running around, you got life going on. Like there's limited time. And so if I'm going to carve out like a night or a lunch or a coffee, and I'm not enjoying every damn second of it with somebody, like I'm just not going to do that anymore. Right. Like what am I spending my time doing?
Yeah. I'm the same boat. I couldn't agree with that more.
Well, man, this has been fun. Glad to hear you're doing well. I appreciate you taking the time.
All right. Sweet talking to you, Billy.
You too, man. Thanks for listening to this episode of the No One Is Watching podcast. If you'd like to support the show, hit the subscribe button, leave a review, and share it with your friends. If you're interested in similar content focused on leadership, culture, and high performance, check out nooneiswatching.com. Your time is valuable, so I appreciate you spending some of it with me today. See you next time.